All right, welcome everyone to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today we have
Yay!
our guest is
Did
his name's
some.
John, but he goes by Shipwreck. Where I met him on Blue Sky.
Wrong one. Here we go. Here we go.
What?
Oh,
Yes. Yes. He's here. He's here.
now you might recognize John here because he has done stuff with the ACA like I used to do, like the nonprofits and stuff like that. So. You also, from what I remember, you were saying you also do stuff for RFR, and there was something else.
I have taken a little bit of a vacation from RFR, but I was an interviewer for their volunteers. I plan to go back as soon as I take care of a few things. But, it's like, yeah, they're a great organization, really good organization. They do wonderful work. So I don't know how many lives they've saved, but they've done their job. Lots, probably I would think, yeah.
I have a link to the RFR stuff down below as well for anyone that is deconstructing and needs someone to talk to, or just needs someone to talk to in general because they're having issues, I guess. So,
with source of resources.
Yes, it is, and it's necessary because a lot of times when people do, any of folks that do leave. Their belief systems, they can be pretty rough on them, especially when their family members just totally like disengage with them or whatever. So it's good to have someone or an ear to listen to or an ear to speak to. So yeah, highly recommend Recovering from Religion. There you go, right there. A little plug for them right there. So Mr. Shipwreck, we'll call you, I guess. What we do here is we
John, hey, you works.
Hey, you. So what we do is we chat with folks about their journeys away from their previous beliefs, whether it be religious or hell. We've even had an ex-white supremacist on the show one time, and an ex-guru in the world of pseudoscientific fucking new wavy shit too. So
yes, good.
Although I fear she's, I fear she's dabbling into it again, and I'm like,
let's have an intervention.
Yeah. So why don't you take us on that journey? And like I said earlier, if we have any questions, we'll ask for clarification or whatever.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning, but I'll try not to be too long with that.
I have a first preemptive question.
Okay.
What was the flavor of your religion?
I was a Unitarian Universalist.
Okay.
I was raised
what is that?
Unitarian Universalist. I am a second generation Unitarian Universalist. One of those rare breed who is not didn't find the church on their own. I was brought up in it.
What is their doctrine? What do they? I've never heard of them.
They don't have one. There's no dogma. It's a very liberal church. They do have a course if you want to have dogma. That it's called Building Your Own Theology. Well, I understand it's a good class. It's designed by psychiatrists and other PhDs that hang around UU churches, so it's like, it's not a bad program from the people I know have gone through it. Really enjoyed it. So. If you want to do that, build your own theology when you don't have one because you're an atheist. It's kind of like, but you see, at one point the UU Church was like 40% atheist. It's like in a lot of their congregations, because the atheists didn't have a community to belong to, and there was no shaming of anybody in that church. So it was a place where they could be atheist and not get dumped upon because of it.
Right.
As more and more atheist organizations came out in the Humanist Society after its foundation, wherever it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, started gaining ground, it was like, they had other places to go and do that. So, there's still a lot of them, and they usually have a group meeting they have an after church meeting for atheists, and we had one. I started the Pride group in my last church, and so we had a Pride thing. And we participated in the both the Martin Luther King Day parades and the Pride parade. And the Pride parade in St. Petersburg, which is the largest pride event in the Southeast, and also the Martin Luther King Day parade in Tampa, which has all the school bands, like the ones who get selected to go to the Rose Bowl and shit.
Oh, wow.
They have all these high school bands, and they are absolutely fantastic, And so you sit there, if you like big, bands, marching bands, it was just amazing.
As
one in front of us and one behind us, it was great.
As a forming marching band marcher, parades are the fucking worst, dog, man. I'm talking about there's no shade. You are out there roasting in this cheap wool suit that is so itchy. You are sweating so bad because you got to wear like a t-shirt and like basketball shorts underneath the wool tuxedo that they have stapled onto you. And you
Why would they use wool?
The quarter-inch thick wool.
Oh my God, it's so terribly thick. It's like made of blankets, dude. It's made of blankets. And then they say,
just
okay,
to let you
now,
people know, in downtown Tampa this time of year, Martin Luther King Day, it is like 85 to 90 degrees and about 70% humidity. So,
but you have to do the parade down the main thoroughfare where there's lots of buildings.
And into the stadium after that.
And there's no trees because there's not a forest in the middle of town. Of course not. It's just blacktop. And you just roast like a little weenie at the 7-Eleven, just rotating, just scalding on all sides, losing water by the bucket. Oh. But everybody else enjoys the parade, the sacrifices you make for marching. So, march on, marchers.
No, thank you.
People make those sacrifices for their music.
Yeah.
They're hoping to get noticed. There's got to be some big producer somewhere in the stands there.
Well, that's the only way to get out of your gym credit. You know what I mean? Like you have to go out there and and boil in the sun, or else your marching band credit doesn't count for gym. And then you got to take gym in high school. And I was like, fuck that. So I was like, all right, I'll march.
And
who knew?
The odd thing is that they do the same sort of blackmail in officer candidate school in the Navy. I mean, because you have morning inspection. No, if you have morning inspection, you have morning inspection every day, right? Uh-huh. And it's before your classes. So we're talking, you get up at like dark 30 and you get your room ready for inspection.
Oh, I know that time well.
Yeah, and then you go, you march over to, do after the inspection, you march over, do some PT and that sort of thing. Except if you're in the band or you're in the choir. And I was in the choir. And at that point, you just get up, straighten your bed a little bit. You have to be there early, so you bolt, and you get to the choir practice. The only bad thing is if you're any decent singer, when it gets to the performance at the end of the OCS class, ours was for Christmas. So we had to do the Hallelujah chorus. And if you've ever tried to sing that.
Oh man, why do they?
I've tried. The words don't come out.
Why do they always want to torture young people? Like, let them sing something enjoyable, but it's always like, I don't know why they have like "Auld Lang Syne" should not be the song at graduations.
That's true.
What?
Is true.
It is?
Yeah, here.
Hey, you could do like our buddy the Bart at the on The Simpsons and shift all the music out for like In the Gata de Vida or something. Everybody singing it to organ music. That was pretty good. I could just see him doing that.
Give me some. Yeah, I'll take some Smoke on the Water. You know what I mean? Like, just
that would be great. That'd be so cool.
I have completely distracted you as per usual.
Yeah, well,
but
I was going to say, don't you do that? Isn't that your function?
Yes. But now that you guys got the background of the story, that was all context for this next part. All right, take us away, Shipwreck.
Okay. Well, let me see. I was raised in a Unitarian Universalist church, and the first memory I have of that was when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I used to go to.
I can't even remember last week. What the hell is this?
I had a traumatic childhood, so I remember a lot of it.
Oh, shit.
I won't get into any of that.
Apologies.
We need more than an hour for that. You know? Let me go through it with my therapist first. You know?
let me get my couch background. Hold on a second.
Yeah, but that was. But anyway, so I went to like Sunday school, and the UU Church had their services in a synagogue.
Mm.
You know, that's not an unusual thing for the small fellowships and that when they can't
Yeah.
really afford their own business. They usually hook up with a Reformed Jewish place, and you know, because they see eye to eye on a lot of shit. So, and they'll use their basement or something. And so I was raised. My first experience with the UU Church was in a Jewish synagogue. And my mother used to tell me a story. This isn't my memory. This was hers. She says, you know, one day, we had a guest over for dinner, and she was asking about where you went to school, and you just piped up and said, "I'm Jewish." And my mother looked at him and said, "What led you to think that you were Jewish?" And I just said, I said, "You are what you think," and left it at that.
And then promptly
Like
turned
4
on his
years
heels,
old.
and walked out proudly.
Walked away, proudly walked away. You know, I don't know, but you know that was her story. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Where are my
remember
Hanukkah
saying
present?
Yeah, that's it.
Where's the loot?
Hanukkah's better. They get presents for a while, not this one
Yeah.
day crap.
12 days of Christmas never made it over the ocean, I tell you that. We never
Yeah,
got
I
no
know.
goddamn 12 days of presents my ass. Why are we singing this song?
What is wrong with these people?
Not one partridge, not one goose lane. I ain't got shit.
You know, yeah, that's it. You know. Anyway, so I kind
You
of
were Jewish.
I was Jewish in the Unitarian Church.
Maybe you thought it was because of the building. And you're like, oh, we go to the Jewish building, so maybe I'm Jewish.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. I must be Jewish because I'm going to a synagogue. You know. So
Yeah,
it's like,
makes sense.
You know, it made sense to me as a
I went to a
4-year-old.
synagogue didn't mean I was Jewish. Well, hell,
I know
even
people
had
who
a
are
bar
Jewish who've
mitzvah.
never seen the inside of a synagogue.
Yeah,
Right.
Don't
me
want
too.
to.
Me too.
Nobody explained all the rules to you. They only like let you make your own rules, so that's not your fault. That was
Yeah,
a logical
it's my
deduction
fault.
as far as I'm concerned. Checks out.
Hey, in the UU Church, you do make your own decisions about what you believe and don't believe. You know, so it's like it's cool with them. You know,
Canonically.
they
does
only
the
ask that
sermon-
you have a rational presentation of your beliefs. In other words, you have some sort of basis for why you believe that.
Right.
So how does a sermon work in this place?
It's not really a sermon. It's kind of like a presentation. It can be
Thank you.
a lot of times it's just a member of the congregation who has a specialty about something that is related to whatever activities the church are doing, because they're usually activists, most of them. You'll see them in protests and parades. We had 2 of our people in Tampa get arrested in Texas for protesting the back a few years ago when they were locking up kids. Yeah, they went there and were protesting that, and they got arrested for blocking traffic.
Oh, geez.
They were, and I was so proud of them, boy, because they're 2 elderly people. These are not spring chickens, right? These people were like at the time were like my age now. I mean, in their late 60s, and then they were gung ho. They're going to go out there and protest, and they did. And I give them all the props for that. That was a great deal. But I'm not going to mention their names because I haven't talked to them. So
Sure, that's fine.
say I'm going to be on television. I'm going to laud your actions, and they will probably go, "No, you are not." I said, "Okay, I won't." However, that was pretty interesting. But that is a modern day thing. But back in my childhood was relatively normal, considering my father was, how to put it delicately, an alcoholic. All right, not so delicately.
It is what it is, right?
It is what it is. Yeah, he was a happy drunk. He'd take his pitcher of Manhattans and sit in his chair and read his books and get totally blitzed during the night. And then after he ran out of Manhattans, he'd drink port wine until he passed out. That was pretty much the nightly evening thing. But he would watch Walter Cronkite and made us watch the news every night. Mm-hmm. That was a good thing. He did make us watch the news. He didn't discuss it with us because by that time he couldn't speak. But but he wasn't a violent drunk or anything like that until much later. So, but he did have a problem, and eventually he did deal with it. I didn't really, after the first divorce from my mother, we all went back to her hometown in Leominster, Massachusetts from Palo Alto, California. We were there for about 3 years, be 5th through 7th grade. And he came back the 3rd year and visited, ostensibly to see his children, all 5 of us. And he talked my mother into marrying him again. Said he was sober. He was sober for 6 months and things like that. And he wanted to have his family back. And my mother, being the kind-hearted soul that she was, said yes, mainly because she never dated anybody else after the marriage. People asked her. Somebody she worked with in Turkey when she was a missionary there, nurse there, the doctor who she worked with going cave to cave and treating people in the Anatolia in the mountains. She and him kind of had a thing, but that was in the late 1940s, so it was totally something different. But after she got divorced in the 60s, they got back in touch. He at that point was head of the Heart Association, so he had made his medical career pretty well, but she just wasn't interested at that time. And she said and she confessed to me once, many years later, that my dad was the only person she felt physically, mentally, and spiritually, he was an atheist, spiritually, comfortable with, is what she said. So,
even as an atheist, eh?
Yeah, well, he was an atheist and she was a Congregationalist turned Unitarian Universalist. So it was like, live and let live. Whatever anybody wants to believe is fine, just so long as it's not, messing with anybody else, right? And that's kind of the rule. That's why I fit so well into many atheist groups, because it's do no harm, and that's sort of what I was raised with. That just don't do any harm to anybody, if you can avoid it. If you can't avoid it,
do as you will.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's an interesting segue, because that goes into my second religious revelation here. When I was a teenager, when I was 16, a little shop opened up outside the high school.
Of horrors?
Just down the road, that was Merlin's Sorcerer's Shop.
I have to keep muting. I'm sorry. I have to keep muting because this fucking band is pissing me off. That's fucking Prexton over here. I have been laughing at St. Hans, and yes, Neil, it was a little shop of horror. Okay, I'm going back on mute.
Does that mean we can't dance to the music? Okay, never mind.
Wait, we're supposed to be dancing? Wait a minute. Nobody told me I didn't put my tutu on.
You didn't get the dance card, did you?
I did not.
Anyway, so my next thing was a foray into the sorcerer's shop, and they had a witchcraft class that I took, and I got kind of all messed around with that for which was kind of like an eclectic Wiccan kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not Wicca as you know it now. This was like in the 70s. So it's like
right. Pretty much near the birth of the whole Wicca thing,
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Well, 15 years after Gardner founded
Right.
his Wiccan stuff, he was kind of like the father of the Golden Dawn version of Wicca. And
The Rosicrucians.
Ross Nichols, his good friend and fellow nudist, Ross
Wait.
Nichols.
I thought you said
You didn't know
nipples. And then
No,
you called him a
nudist.
nudist. I was like, wait a minute.
Nipples the
The
nudist.
name makes sense now.
Nichols, Ross Nichols.
Nichols. Okay.
Nichols, as in change, but
Yeah.
Ross Nichols founded OBOD, the what is that? The Order of Bards, Oviates, and Druids, which is the big Druid organization in England at the same time. So it was, that's kind of that's why they are so similar in a lot of their rituals, is because of that. But it's all based basically on
Tons of mice likes to have his way with me. It says I'm
That
in my
sounds like
late
fun.
60s too. I'm not in the late 60s. And I was not a wrestler. Mikey's like, yes, you were.
Yes, you were. No, you weren't. Yes, you were.
There's footage online. I'll link it for you guys later.
Oh, good Lord.
Okay, that'd be great.
I gotta make it real quick. Hold on.
Just have the AI do it in the background. You don't have to do it yourself. That old manual labor thing is all a thing of the past now. Like, just have the computer do it. Anyway,
The manual labor of
I got
thinking.
into that. And I got religiously into the God and Goddess shit and Goddess shit, and then
me too.
And then I went through high school doing that, and my sister did it with me, and she's my older sister. So, got to be good friends with the people at the shop, and stayed friends with them until I'll get into that a little bit later, because that kind of goes on a tangent that I kind of want to go down. So we'll leave that there at the moment. But so after that, after high school, I went to the local community college. So I was still involved in that kind of thing, and we met a bunch of other occultists in the area at the college, including one Anton LaVey type Satanist, which was kind of interesting. But since we were just a small group in the entire area, we kind of formed a kind of guild. So everybody had their specialty. Some people did healing, and some people did fortune telling, and some people were basically just witches who didn't get money for anything, but according to the original rules,
it's not to be done for profit.
Not to be done for profit, but those of us who were witches would do spells for people if they really thought they needed them.
Donations are accepted.
Donations. Yeah, I never asked for anything. I say, yeah, I got time tomorrow to do it. I'll do something for you. Cool. Miracle upon miracles, people actually, when they found out that somebody was working in their behalf, did the work to solve the problem they were having, themselves, because they got working on it because they knew it was going to succeed, right? And I'm sitting there going, and that's when I started getting my first twinges of self-fulfilling prophecy shit, So I kind of, that's back of my mind, little twinges going on there. But then I went away to my last 2 years of college to San Francisco State University. And San Francisco at the time, let's just put it this way, Harvey Milk had just been elected to the city town council, and Moscone was the mayor. And somewhere around the end of, 78, when they were assassinated, I was at school when that happened. We had one huge candlelight thing at the college. It was like at the university. It was like wall to wall people. Then it just went all the way downtown. I mean, it was like the Castro was just like lit up. It was you could see the glow on the horizon where the Castro was. It was like, wow. It was a tragic day.
Yeah.
I just broke my heart. But anyway, that was kind of the second Stonewall for a lot of people. So and Dan White, curse his soul, he kind of got off on the Twinkie defense. You remember that one? The sugar defense. That was all amped on Twinkies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar.
Oh, his defense in court when he was brought up on the murder charges for just premeditatedly walking up and killing the mayor, then going across the hall and killing Harvey Milk, who was one of the first gay elected people in the country, because Milk didn't live up to a bargain they had made to vote on each other's stuff in the town council because of conscience and things like that. So it was but he claimed to have been eating Twinkies all day. The kind of things that, you can leave on your shelf for 150 years, literally, and they will not dissipate. They still stick to a wall, that kind of stuff, And so he said he had eaten like so many Twinkies and so was so amped on sugar, he didn't know what he was doing and he got off. They call it the Twinkie defense. He didn't get completely off, but, other things happened to him. But, it was like, I don't know the history of that after that, but I just remember the Twinkie defense and being rather pissed off.
I've heard the term Twinkie defense before, but I never knew the story behind it. So no.
Yeah, it was the
I didn't know that either.
Moscone milk murder. Dan White. It's funny how I can't remember my neighbor's name, but there's certain things in my life that I remember very clearly. So, like being 4 years old and being a Jew. There's lots of little things, that all the while I was growing up. Well, after I graduated from college, which was the next year in 79, I graduated in May of 1980. I went searching for a job I was a political science major. I had one offer when I worked for, I can't remember her first name. Last name was Burke, for Attorney General. Back when our Volkswagen loving, bicycle riding governor, I can't remember his name, was running, and he stole all the poll workers, so we didn't get any, and she lost, and I was very disillusioned with the Democratic Party at that point. And so I kind of I've voted independent my whole life up until Hillary ran, and that was personal for me. And a little anecdote was when I first was medically discharged from the Navy, I wasn't able to even get a board hearing for 4 years to have disability board even tell me no. It was like 4 years. I'm just sitting here in limbo. And back then there was no backlog. I mean, there weren't a lot of people, trying to get, but I was dumped into the VA immediately because I was medically discharged. And what they do is you go from medically discharged to the Veterans Administration. That's it. You walk across the street. That's what you do. And so I'd been being seen and paying my tithes to the, for my prescriptions and things. And I just wanted to see what they would get me for disability. The magic number was 50%, which means I didn't have to pay for my meds. Right. I didn't want to pay for my meds at that point. But, it was only $8 a med, but this was back in the mid 90s. So that was, I've skipped my whole career.
That was rent.
Yeah. And so,
$8
4 years. So I finally, I just found this thing called the internet.
Turn back.
And so on it was the White House webpage, and there was a place where you could leave a message.
Uh-oh.
So I left a message for Clinton, Bill Clinton, never got a response. But there was a place you could talk to Hillary Clinton, I said, well, she's the first lady. She might be able to, knock some of these guys' heads together and get something done. So I sent a letter to her and both my senators, Dianne Feinstein and Barbara something or other.
It's a weird last name.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I wonder why her parents did that. Anyway, so I sent letters to them and explained my predicament and asking, does it always take this long for somebody to get a simple board? And 2 weeks later, I got a notification from the VA. And they had scheduled my board for like that week. And so I had to go back up to San Francisco. I was living up in the mountains at that point.
What district were you in? I found the list.
Oh, well, it was senators. So it's the whole state of California.
Oh, you're senators. Okay. I was like, I could find that. 1980s California.
90s, early 90s, actually. This would be about 94, 95.
Zoomed into.
But I found out after this that the VFW guy who was helping me with my claim, he was an old staff sergeant, and he was like, he said, why we got so he's
a recruiter.
Yeah, no, he was interesting because he represented me in these things, right? And but he said, why you got your hearing so quickly? And I said, this isn't quick. 4 years ain't quick, And he said,
you have no
Boxer,
idea.
Barbara Boxer. That was it. It was alliterative. Anyway, the senators all wrote me back, and we're going to look into it, But the reason they gave it to me was apparently Hillary Clinton in the White House caught the Secretary of Veterans Affairs just before a cabinet meeting and asked him one question. How come it's taken this guy 4 years to get a hearing from your organization? I'd like you to write me and tell me why. And then she just turned around and walked off. So apparently that's the story I got, I'm sitting there going, and 2 weeks later I had my board, it's like, I should there,
wow.
Okay, wow. I owe Hillary a lot, a lot, so.
Homie was like, what guy after 4 years? Get the fucking, go send it to him now. No, there's no guy. What are you talking about? Go send that paperwork. Jesus, get him in here.
But, so that's the story that I heard, but I don't know how much veracity there is to that. But I always considered myself, after I got a letter from Hillary saying, I talked to this guy and hopefully you'll hear something soon. I kind of went, cool, and I did. So I was like, okay, so I owe Hillary Clinton something. So when Hillary ran for president, I changed to Democrat, mainly because the individual that she was running against, and I use that in quotes, and a lot of reservations on whether that's an appropriate appellation.
The thing,
yeah, that she ran against. I changed to Democrat at that point. But all through the Reagan Bush years, all through Clinton's, all through W's, I was voting independent. But I've always been liberal. You can't be raised Unitarian Universalist and not be a liberal. It's kind of like it goes.
Or at least progressive, at least.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, you can't do it without being progressive, I should say, because they're more than just liberal. They're kind of way over on the left side here.
Yeah, I call myself a progressive liberal. So.
And then you got me.
And then you got Mikey.
Soon you will all wear the Iron Crown. No.
But,
I like crowns.
So, yeah.
Good.
I don't like wearing them. I don't mind, making art with them. But anyway, I don't do art. Not often. Anyway. I could show you my last attempt at painting a T-shirt, and you would understand why I don't do art. But I wore it at the DC Veterans United protest a couple 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
So I scared people with it. It was fun. Anyway, so where were we? Oh yes, I joined the Navy.
Yes.
I couldn't find a job anywhere. Now my sister and her husband, both Air Force veterans. She was a tech sergeant, and he was her boss sergeant. They got married and started having children, but they also opened up a deli shop, a sandwich shop, and four sandwich shops. They ended up being four sandwich shops and an ice cream parlor. And so they had their own
My
little
kind of people.
Steve's Deli thing, was a thing in South Carolina around the Air Force base there. So and it was pretty popular with, you know, all the first responders and the Air Force guys and all that. So they did pretty well. And they had a little ranch-like thing in Sumter. So so they invited me out to help them with the business, you know, after I had signed up for the Navy, because the Navy said this is going to take a few months, you know.
Right.
So I went from California, because we were living in Monterey at that point. I didn't go through all that because that was all boring shit. So how we got there. My parents got remarried. He was working in Monterey. We moved to Monterey. They got divorced again almost immediately when he started drinking again. And then we moved to Marina, which is just a few miles up the road. So anyway, now you're all caught up, right?
And now we're here. Zip, 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 zip.
So he was sober for 6 months and then got remarried and started drinking again.
Right back
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think my sister told me once, and I could be wrong. It might have been my little brother, Eric, told me that the reason he got remarried was because the laws in California had changed for alimony.
Ooh.
So he could get his child support and alimony reduced. And he did. So, so he made out.
It was a strategy.
I think it might have been a strategy. See, what people don't know about my dad is he was brilliant. I mean, literally brilliant. He was a genius, and in his field, everybody will tell you that he founded and made up his own branch of mathematics. I mean, the guy was brilliant. You know, he had help. Everybody always has help. You know, of other brilliant people. But you know,
Sure.
By all accounts from his coworkers, there was no one better at it than him. So, you know, he might have been a drinker, but when it came to his work, he was an incredibly intelligent man. I don't know what happened to me, but you know, my two of my three little brothers were incredibly intelligent also. And the other one is really bright. And my sister's pretty competent as well, but you know, I don't know what happened to me. I think it kind of skipped.
You got all the sense.
I got all the EQ from my mother, the emotional quotient from my mom. My sister's very emotionally aware as well, so that's kind of fun.
But that is equally as important as demonstrated.
Of course,
You gotta have both. If you don't have both, you just
Don't
end
have
up
both,
being. You turn into a monster.
you turn into an incel and then a monster. You know, that's kind of like what happens.
Elon Musk. Oh, these allergies.
You turn into Elon Musk.
No,
No, not me. I'm too old to turn into anything other than what I am.
Start waving chainsaws around, doing all the drugs you can find.
I would cut my leg off if I tried to do that.
I was secretly like watching that clip, and I was like, juggle it. Turn it on and juggle it. You can do it. You can do anything. Juggle it. But alas, the video wasn't live, so we didn't do it.
Yeah, that's too bad. But so anywho, I joined the Navy, went around the world once, quite literally. Um, just once. A lot of people do it many, many times. Out of my 12 years in the Navy, I spent 7 of them at sea, and another 3 of them on essentially afloat staff work that wasn't really afloat. So because I had gotten sick by then, and they didn't want to lose my career path. And for a ship driver like myself, the surface warfare officer, if you're not at sea, you're not gaining any points towards your next promotion. So they put me on medical hold for about 6 months, and then they transferred me to San Francisco at Treasure Island to an afloat staff, technically an afloat staff, while I went to Oak Knoll Naval Hospital and they tried to fix me.
Treasure Island?
Treasure Island. Yeah, it's right in the middle of the bay. You know the Bay Bridge? It hops over Treasure Island when it goes into San Francisco.
Neil, get your Jolly Roger.
And now
I found the location of Treasure Island.
Yar.
Yar. But yeah, so I hang out in San Francisco on Treasure Island, and occasional visits to the Presidio, and I was on the staff there. For which, oddly enough, being sick and being just fucked over in pain all the time, I managed to earn a Navy Achievement Medal while I was there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I did work a lot. I mean, I distracted myself from the horrible life I was in by working very hard at everything. And I volunteered for shit. Like during the Oakland Hills fire, I was manning the operations center for the task force in Bay Area. We had all 9 of the military installations there under my admiral. So I was in his emergency operations center alone. Okay. There was nobody else, just me. And I was getting calls from people, what about this? What about that? I wouldn't make any decisions. So I called the chief of staff, and he said, let them do whatever they want. And I said, okay. So the CO of the Alameda Naval Air Station would call up, right? A senior captain about ready to put stars on himself, right? And he would say, what's the admiral say about this? What we want to do is we want to take our gyms, and we want to put a bunch of cots in it and set up a food place and have coffee and things for all the firefighters. We've already sent volunteers out to firefight, so we figured we could just, when they need to sleep, they can come and do shifts in he had this thing just planned out. Right? He said, do we have permission to do it? And do we have permission to do it? Just tell him to do what he wants. Sir, it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. He says, click, that was what I did for the fire until the next day. Now I was up all night with this. Literally up all night. That was not unusual for me at this point in my life, because being in the Navy, you have one of the evening or night watches every day. You either have one of the late dog watch, the evening watch, the mid watch, or the morning watch. Mm-hmm. The evening, mid, and morning watch, that 12 hours there, you have one of those, since there's usually only 3 sections, you have one of those 3 every night. Plus, you have to be at quarters at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you have to have, before that, you have about an hour before to prepare for that and make sure you got everything that your troops need to do their day's work, right? And you have to talk with your chief, or in my case, my senior chief, and that sort of shit, and get everything coordinated for the day, so that you take a look at the plan of the day that the XO puts out before 6 o'clock when you muster everybody. You muster everybody wherever their muster station is, and then you do all the rigmarole, get everybody going, kick them in the ass if they need it, and they all go running off, spring off and do the job. No, but shipboard organization is different from other services. So it's like, it's very much, it's kind of organized. It's still a hierarchy, but there's certain points, I think, where it just diverges. Like our sailors who are basically, I own machinist mates, or they worked in the plant, the power plant, and they had maintenance to do. They knew what maintenance had to do. They had a big schedule I signed every month. They had all the various maintenance things they had to do on it. And the chiefs usually made it out. We have a whole PQS, personal qualification standards on how to do the PMS system. The PMS system is the planned maintenance system. So every piece of equipment has PMS involved with it. So they always are working on this stuff, but they kind of self-drive it. They just know they have to get it done because they know I'll be looking at that schedule. And if it ain't X'd off, I'm going to be asking that particular person. And nobody wanted to go talk to the lieutenant. That was me. So nobody wanted to go talk to me.
You don't want to be in trouble.
Saddled with you.
Yeah.
They saddled you
Well,
with that
I was
topic.
not a kind, loving person when I was in the Navy. I was really big into good order and discipline at the time. So,
Well, that's not a bad quality if you're in the military.
no. The captain liked it.
He didn't get to lieutenant by being everybody's friend. You know what I mean? Like
This is true.
That's not how that works.
I had been known to counsel officers who worked for me for being too friendly with their troops. Didn't work. He's the only officer I ever gave J's to on their fit rep. It's an alphabetical, A, B, C, D. Anything less than a B is kind of like, you're only good for your one tour. That's it. You're gone. So I always had straight A's. I got one B once when I was an ensign because I did a goof. I did a goof off once. But it was a minor thing. But they didn't feel like they could give me an A. So I kind of got a B plus. So, okay, whatever.
Oh, they threw the plus.
It didn't kill my
That's
career.
okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It didn't kill my career. So I was good. So after my first ship, that was my first ship, the Incheon. My first deployment on that ship was to Beirut during 82, 83, where we were doing peacekeeping operations with the
I was there at that time too.
Group. You were? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Israel at that time.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So I had my first taste of what it's like to be on an amphib with a helo. I was on the helo carrier, which is an amphibious helicopter carrier. Mm-hmm. We had the Chinooks and the Stallions and all those helicopters, and the God, my brain is just failing me today. We had the typical combat loadout for Marines of helicopters, and we had the airport,
Apaches?
Which was our group. No Apaches. They weren't. They were in the 80s. No Apaches. There were Cobras. Yeah.
Cobras. Yeah, maybe that's what I meant then. Yeah. Apaches came a little bit towards the end.
Cobras. Cobras. It's the night terrors.
Hey, they were no slouches, man. The Blackhawks might be good, but I've seen Cobras light up a target in the ocean, and they started firing that gun, and then all of a sudden a square mile of the ocean just sort of stands up and sits down. Yeah. You sort of say, okay, don't get in front of that. Just don't be there.
Do you remember that from The Simpsons when, like, I think Bart had Homer tied to him or like handcuffed to him because they got in trouble with court or something. The judge made them get handcuffed together. So Homer had to go to school. So Homer was supposed to be sleeping next to Bart's desk, and he started screaming. He's like, "Oh, cobras, cobras!" He's like, "It's the night terrors, ma'am." It was the screaming of cobras. I'm sorry. It was a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah, but it was so funny because, after my first ship, I went to the cruiser out of Japan. So I was into overseas assignments. So I really liked it. So I went to Battle Group Alpha, which was the Midway, which is now a museum in San Diego. And that makes you feel so old. And so I went to the USS Reeves as their missile officer. So I owned the missile houses, fore and aft. It was a double-ended missile shooter, anti-air missile shooter. Had a course, it had torpedoes and submarine stuff on it too. It did all the missions, but the main mission was the SM-2ER extended range missiles that we fought aircraft with. So we were what they call Alpha Whiskey, which is the air warfare commander for the battle group. Cool stuff, real cool stuff. I won't talk much about it because I don't know what I can talk about, what I can't, but I can tell you.
Yeah, YouTube is
It
weird.
was cool shit. It was a lot of fun. So, and
No
I
doubt.
also was the guard force officer, which is when you have heavy weapons on board, you have to have a guard force to protect them from getting ripped off by anybody. So,
Right.
Pirates are a problem when you have big, long missiles, and ASROCs and things like that on board. Everybody wants those for some reason. And back then they did anyway. Now they'd just be, oh, that's old shit, man.
Outdated
That's
tech,
useless
man.
now.
Well, there's 2 Hornets out the ocean if anybody wants them.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, okay. So anyway, so I went there. I had a great time. Sailed around the Pacific for 2.5 years. Got to make my mark on the ship's history. I had more weapons inspections in 2.5 years than the ship had ever gone through before. I passed every one of them with no gigs, 100%.
Wow.
I made 2. I got basically 2 Battle-E's off of that ship, and for the 94 and the 96, or was it 95? Anyway, it's a yearly thing. But I was there for 2.5 years, and so I made history that way. And the last way I did it was when I was leaving the ship, much to the chagrin of Captain Chappell at the time, because he tried to get me to stay. He says, I'll change those orders for you. I had gotten orders to South America on a disattached tour all by my lonesome in Columbia, South Carolina. And I was itching to go. Why? Because it had language school. And I could go to Monterey to language school. I could go home to language school for 6 months, I said.
Easy peasy.
Take it.
I'm going. I took it. I wish I don't wish I hadn't. It was a good experience, but there are a couple of mistakes I made coming out of that I really regret. But anyway, so I was highlined off the ship. They almost never do that anymore. They have helicopters now. They land a helicopter, you get on the helicopter, you fly off, and they deposit you at the airport. You grab
Wait,
a max flight wherever you're going.
Are you talking about zip line?
I'm talking about they put you in a cage in a Gumby suit, big bright orange foam rubber Gumby suit, in case you
Gumby.
And then they drag you with rope, and this isn't wire rope. This is just rope from one ship to the other while they're going like 12 knots together, very close together, so that if anybody even blinks too hard, the ships will crash. So
Right.
with you in the middle. So it's very dangerous.
That'll leave a mark.
Yeah. Well, you can see a video of it under USS Reeves. I think it's 80 Sea of Japan deployment 86. And I'm the guy in the big orange suit that's being, and it has to be hand drawn. You cannot have a winch do this. So they have like 20 guys lined up on there and 20 guys here, and they let you out. These guys pull you over. It's like, has to be by hand, by law, by regulations. And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, and what used to happen when they had to do this a lot, if they really didn't like the guy who was they would dip him in the ocean. Because it was all loose. And so I'm waiting for that because I had a reputation, so I'm waiting for this to happen. I'm saying I will kill every one of those guys, and
as soon as I get out of here.
It was very good. I just went smoothly over there, and they dropped me off on this civilian ship, MSC ship, Sea Lift Command ship, and they're all Merchant Marine. So, and I spent about 4 days going back to Japan on this ship, bored out of my mind reading some of their reading material, and they must have had a reading level of about 5th grade, because that's what most of the books were. And I was just bored out of my mind because I had nothing to do. I wasn't standing watch. I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting on a ship, like I do now when I go on cruises. I just sit on the ship. I enjoy it now because I can drink.
Yeah.
Makes it much better.
Much better. Yeah. Well, there's also a lot of activities on cruises that there aren't on Navy ships.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So yeah, but that was my second ship. Then and while I was doing that, I was really kind of into the more formal Unitarian Universalist stuff. I had gone to the Norfolk Church when I was on my first ship. There were no churches on my second, which is weird because they also had a chaplain on board, but he was Catholic. So they made me the Protestant lay leader. You know why the XO did that? Because I was a Unitarian Universalist, and you guys know more about religion than anybody else. Bang my head on the table. Is that it? Is that me going over?
There it is. Yo, that's so sketch. So sketchy.
No way. I think that was before your time. That one.
I don't think they do that anymore because just about every ship has a helipad on it now. Yeah. Even my ammo ship had one on it, so I was sitting there going, well, it was an auxiliary too, so it has to have one, move stuff around with. But but we had a helipad on the Reeves too. It's just that it was back aft by the missile launcher, and nobody wants to have a helicopter that close to their missile.
Yeah, I was going to say that seems kind of like an odd place to put it.
Well, it's down below it too, so the helicopter has to come in, and here's the arms for the missile things. And even if you don't have any missiles on the rails, you still like this thing's coming, and if they just go a few foot in the wrong direction,
yeah,
and that would kill the helicopter, which would land on the deck and cause a fire right next to a magazine. I just never thought that was a good idea. But
bad idea.
Bad idea. But anyway, yeah. So I don't think we ever had a helicopter land. We never did that exercise or something. But anyway, that was my Reeves tour. Then I went to language school, and I went to South America for two and a third years, working with the Colombian Navy, all by my lonesome in Cartagena, Colombia, with all the Canadians.
Yeah.
Those damn Canadians.
They're everywhere.
Wintertime in Canada was vacation time in Cartagena for all the Canadians.
Yeah.
Of course.
The snowbirds, as they call them.
Yeah, snowbirds. But they came down to Cartagena for their vacations and were a bunch of really white people getting very badly sunburned.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, but we had some expats there. There was an Aussie that I knew. There was a woman from New York who married a Colombian, came down to Colombia, and he died, and she stuck around, and she did jewelry. So she ended up with her emerald shops, Adriana's Joyeria, and she became a very close friend of mine, and my sister's actually. My sister, she wanted dogs. My sister was breeding white shepherds at the time, so my sister and one of her Adriana's friends met in South Carolina and got the dog, and they brought it down to Colombia, and it was a wild animal. Yeah. She couldn't handle it. But anyway, that was another thing. That's a whole nother sea story. I told you I go off on sea stories, so I gave you fair warning about this.
You did.
I think you and Ollie are gonna get along just fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my third tour, and then I went to department head school after I screwed up and didn't stick around Panama for the invasion, which means that the choice billet I had for going and taking a job that nobody wanted and doing a hell of a job at it and I got a Coast Guard commendation for it. Got another piece of gee dunk from the Coast Guard, with an operational O for an operation they did with the Colombian Navy, and I was on the Colombian Navy side. So, and they spoke English. Our Coast Guard, right? So, my admiral that I work for, Admiral Espina, nice guy, took care of me, but anytime he spoke with anybody who was a gringo, I had to stand next to him and translate.
Oh.
And the bad news is this guy spoke perfect English. He just didn't like to.
Yeah, for what?
He like any non-native speaker, he would always like lose a word or miss something, and it would be embarrassing for him. So he just had me translate. You know, and the first few times I did it, he got so far ahead of me. I don't know if you've ever heard somebody speaking in Spanish who was, you know, very fluent in the particular topic they're trying to discuss, but it kind of goes like this. You know, and then it's like you can barely, and even back then when I was getting fairly fluent, hearing the words could get a little bit garbled because and to anybody who's natively spoke, it was perfectly clear, right? But I'm trying to translate and trying to do that in your head at the same time, I'd get confused. So the very next time he wrote it all out on a piece of paper and put it there so I could see it, and had me stand right over his shoulder looking at it and then translate from it. Much better.
Yeah, it's easier.
Thank you. Thank you for the closed captioning. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, it was
makes it much
fun.
easier.
But you know, he was a great guy, and he never, you know, he never did anything to make me feel that he didn't make me feel wanted and needed there. So I had a great time. The Colombian Navy are very professional, and I you know, and the people I met were I taught their surface warfare school. I taught at their naval academy whenever they needed me to, and very, very informal settings, and very professional. So I had a great time. I really did. And even with the gi dunk, which I thought was unwarranted. But so then I went to department head school, and I went out, and this is when I started going to my UU church again in Newport, you know, where the Naval Training Center is, and that's where the department head school. That's where OCS was for me. That's where we call it baby SWAS, or, you know, junior officer SWAS. And then now I go to the senior one.
Officer candidate school. You got to forgive these military people. They speak in acronyms.
This is true. And worse, I speak in navalese, which means that Army and the only other service it understands is the Marine Corps, right? So it's like, it can get a little weird. But yeah, speaking Navy, people can really, it just comes so instinctively after 12 years.
Oh yeah, I guess it would. Sure.
I got a bunch of military friends, and then I did freshman year Marine, and then the last 3 years Air Force, ROTC in high school. So like I understand it just because I've had Mage burn me for a good 45 minutes because I decided not to shut up one day. So like I understand.
I can't believe that, Mikey.
Yeah. It's like when you can make him laugh, you can ride that wave. But if he doesn't find it funny, you are in a lot of trouble. What the hell were you thinking? I was like, it was a risk.
Water.
It was a risk.
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. I tell you though, you know, so I got out of department head school with my skin, got an assignment to the USS Haleakala out of Guam. I don't know if you know about Guam. Guam is an island in the Pacific that is very, very far away from everything else.
Yes.
Not quite as bad as Diego Garcia, but I mean, it's like 800 nautical miles to Samoa. You know, it's in that island chain.
It's in the continent we call Moana.
Yeah.
Oceania, they think they call all the Pacific islands. But the whole thing was a very small island. One half of that entire island is the Air Force Base, and a quarter of the rest of the island is the Navy base. And then a quarter of the island is for the Chamorro people who live there, the natives.
Whose island it is.
Yeah, whose island it is, right. But after World War II, and we lost a lot of soldiers on there taking that island, it was kind of divvied up.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that's aside. That's all U.S. history, and Guamanian history. So anyway, I was the operations officer on that ship, and that was. I'm not going to speak badly about people, so I'm going to just shut up about that ship and move on, because I'll get going on a tangent, and I really don't need those people to call me and say, "You son of a bitch."
No, we don't. We don't.
We don't need that.
We don't need the
Don't need
Secretary
that.
of
No, I
Defense
don't need
on us.
that right now. Yeah, well. Oh, I'd love to piss him off. Wait a minute. No, wait. To piss that particular individual off, I would go to great lengths. Yes.
With his makeup. But let's. Did you try any other stuff besides Wicca? Because we're a little past the hour, but.
Yeah, we've gone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
I didn't even get halfway through. I'm sorry. I can beat you up real quick with a quick synopsis if you like. When I was discharged from the Navy with what turned out to be multiple sclerosis, I had just made lieutenant commander a couple of years before. I made the list, but I didn't put it on for a year and a half because I thought I was on medical hold and you can't promote. The admiral I was working with at the time said, "No, you just have to do the PT test," which was an interesting proposition. And I did, and I actually managed to pass it. Don't ask me how. I don't know. I put it on. So I was already getting paid for it, I found out. Me paying attention to my paycheck was not a thing. So, and so when they discharged me at Treasure Island, I was a civilian again, and I moved up to the mountains, Sierra Nevada, next to Yosemite, on a friend's really small piece of land, kind of a ranch, had one horse thing on it, and started doing reenactments and reliving my Wiccan days, because the person who owned the ranch was Kathy and Roger Clugston. Kathy Clugston was part of Merlin's Sorcerer's Shop, an owner of Merlin's Sorcerer's Shop back in the day when we were doing Renaissance fairs up in the Black Forest in California.
Oh, cool.
Full circle. Now I'm doing Civil War reenactments as a Confederate.
Oh, boy.
Because there weren't enough Confederates, because nobody wanted to be on the losing side.
I guess that makes sense.
I'll go, I'm good for it. I've been losing for the last few years anyway. I might as well. So I did that, and we had a nice little company of those guys, and we did fights down in the valley. And I also was doing gunfights with Rogers, the guy's property I lived on, Rogers' group called the Boot Hill Gang. And this was a gunfight group that we did skits and that sort of thing for Tenaya Lodge. And we did the Maverick opening in Fresno, where we did, a gunfight outside the front of the theater for Maverick. And, we did things like that, and we were considered the best group in that area in Central California at the time. So
nice.
I was one of the people in that thing for like 2.5 years until they disbanded. And the second year I was in it, we won the Calico Gunfight Championships. So we'd done good. So in Calico, California is where they hold they call them the National Gunfighter Championships, but it's really just California. And so we kicked ass on that one. So and
that's cool.
So we had originally been hired by Calico, the ghost town Calico, to come and do gunfighting in the town before the competition. So I was sitting there getting ready for somebody to jump me here, leaning up, full regalia, holstered Colt, and Navy Colt from the Civil War, and black powder. We used black powder for everything. So that's what we did. And I had a blast. But in the meantime, I was starting to
No pun intended.
revisit. Yeah. Meanwhile, back on the ranch, literally, I was getting back in touch with my pagan roots, and I started looking into Druidry. That's where I found Ross Nichols' books and Obad, and I was corresponding with a couple of guys in England about it, and that sort of thing. And I never fully joined. I didn't want to spend the money, for one, and it wasn't real expensive. But by that time, my severance pay was running out, and I had to be a little bit more cautious about what I was spending money on. I did run out of money eventually. I was going to school, getting a biology degree, which I was 1/2 a semester away from getting, and ran out of money and had to go to work and drop it. So,
oh shit,
that hurt, because I was going to go get a master's in it after that, but I just did not have the wherewithal. Even with VA post-education help, I just couldn't make ends meet. And I'm one of those chronic, got to pay my bills guys right now. A day before they're due. I'm just disciplined like that, and not having that gets me a little bit crazy. So I did the Druidy thing, and then I met Brian. We got together, and he moved to Florida, and I moved with him, and we've been attached at the hip ever since. 25 years, because that was in 1999 I met him. And I had moved back to Massachusetts because my mother's business was failing, and she wanted me to come be her office manager, business manager. So I went back to do that, and it failed anyway. We ended up fighting a lot. I went and got a job up in another thing, and ta-da. And that's what happened. And then I went in and I got kind of Buddhist oriented. I had already gotten kind of New Age oriented from when I was a teenager. I knew some New Age guys who were really part of my family. And they did spiritualism, and they did a lot of Edgar Cayce type stuff. And
oh boy.
So, I had that background, but I was kind of also in the Wiccan side of things at the same time. So, and some of my friends are still into it, and I got them involved in it 100 years ago, so, but they enjoy it. So I'm whatever they're happy with. Yeah. So that was it. I did the Buddhist thing for a little while. The church the Tampa church had a Buddhist group meeting for chanting and meditation on Thursdays. I went there while I lived up in Tampa three times. And then I just got on my own thing with a little Zen and reading a lot of books and that sort of thing, and trying to figure out Suzuki's Zen Buddhism and that sort of thing. But I'm not an expert on Buddhism. You'd have to talk to Richard Gilliver about that.
Yes,
because he is. But I did learn quite a bit about it, and I still do a form of transcendental or Zen meditation. It's not TM as far as I did go to that. My dad paid for it, actually, because he said it had great effects on people's minds, and he was all about that. So he paid for us to go get Maharishi's transcendental meditation, and I did that for years. But then when I started getting in later on, when I didn't have time in the Navy, I just dropped meditating until much later. And by that time I was getting influenced by Vispayana and other things. So, sure. Meta meditation, that sort of thing. And then in 2020, guess what? I found my algorithm in YouTube brought up an ACA show, and it was Atheist Experience with Matt, who now I know, but at the time I listened to the first one and I went, whoa, and a little light clicked on, and all that old atheist crap and humanist crap from back behind my medulla oblongata down here, stuffed back in there and crammed in, started coming out. And then I watched those shows, a few of the shows, and I started watching more. And then I watched Talk Heathen, then I watched Nonprofits, and before you know it, I'm doing a lot of ACA stuff, and I had found the ACD. I'd made some good friends there. At this time, Kelly Laughlin was not an ACA host. He was hosting a lot on ACD. And he was the entertainment. He still is the entertainment. Yeah, he still is the entertainment coordinator on ACD. But he did that. And then he, about 6 months into my tenure there, many years ago, about 4 years now, 4 years ago, he got onto a couple of the shows and became the resident geologist. And so that was it. So that's how I came to this. But like I tell people at RFR when I'm interviewing, he says, I explain to them, when you left religion, it was like you were jumping off a cliff and leaving everything behind. And they usually say, yeah, it was hard. And I said, well, mine was like stepping off a curb. It wasn't hard for me. I didn't have the kind of, my parents were all into whatever you were into. It was like all or nothing. My dad was thrilled I became an atheist if he had been alive, but he had died in 97. So it was like, my mother, she couldn't care what I was. I'd come out as gay in 1999, and she just sort of, I told her first, and she just sort of looked at me and said, oh yeah. Her reaction was she stopped and thought for a minute, and she goes, I think your dad was gay. That was her response. We were going to go out and eat. Let's go to the schoolhouse and go out and eat, because that was a restaurant she liked. And I said, okay. So that was the reaction. It was a non-reaction, which is perfect. Like,
oh, you are? Okay. You want to go eat?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way you want it to happen, right? Because you might
very rarely does that happen.
She probably knew anyways, in the back.
Oh yeah, moms are moms.
It's like, yeah. I'm ordering food. Did you say you do like pineapple on pizza? I just wanted to make sure.
Oh,
yeah, I know you're gay, but the pineapple on the pizza though,
But mom has a whole story of her own that should have been in a movie. So I'm not even going to start going into that. That's another 3-hour talk. So, but,
we're already 20 minutes over the usual time limit. So,
I could have warned you about that, but I didn't.
You sort of did. You said you had quite a few little tangenty things going on, but
yeah.
But
that's how I got here.
And and I've seen some of the nonprofit stuff that you've been involved with, and you do a good job. And I who knows? Maybe I'll get back into that, doing that. But the one thing I never did, the one show that I never did on there that I still want to do, it's on my list of shows to do, is the actual atheist experience, because I've pretty much done all the other ones. So I've never done an episode of that. However, in the meantime, I am doing Let's Talk on the Skeptic Haven channel, Skeptic Haven Network channel. And tomorrow night, guys, I'll be doing one with our good friend Godless Engineer. So check that out.
Oh, John. Oh, yeah.
Should be fun. Me and John will be going crazy on there. And I'll get to hang out again with him on at
I love him. He's great.
Oh yeah, John's awesome.
I've talked to him in ACD in the after shows. I MC the AXP after show, and he is a good man. He's somebody that everybody should want to know. Watch his content, people. So, anyway.
But thanks for coming on and hanging out with Mikey and I and sharing your stuff with us. We really appreciate that, because you never know who it's going to help out there, right? So
yeah.
And sorry, I have a mariachi band still in the backyard, still tooting away.
There you go.
ACA. There you go. Yep. I
received that, quite a few years ago now, with a handwritten letter from Mr. Dillahunty himself, back when he was involved with it. So anyway, that's a whole other story.
That's a whole nother kerfuffle that I don't want to relive.
No.
I was there for that. So.
Matt's a friend, and I've done his show a couple times with him, so that's always been fun to do.
Yeah. I don't know if I consider him my friend, but I would consider him my friend, but he probably doesn't even know who I am, so that's fine.
Well, you never know. I used to think that too, and he says, "Yeah, I've heard of you." I'm like, "Oh, all right, cool." Anyway, we are going to do an after party. That's if you're up for it, John. Are you up for?
Oh yeah, I'm
good.
good.
A little bit longer.
I'm good.
There's more people you can tell
handle
some more of these stories too. So.
Oh geez, yes. I've got sea stories on sea stories, so it's like go ahead.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear a few more. If you guys are interested in hanging out in the after party, there's a link to it in the description box below, and it'll take you right over there. You can hang out in the chat and keep us company while we're doing it. If you want to be on the after party, you want to join us, just talk to me or Mikey here, and we'll get a link to you. You can find us on the Blue Skies and whatnot. We're not on Twitter anymore. I gave that shit up a while ago, and soon Facebook will follow. So that's going to be tough.
I gave up Facebook. Facebook is a cesspool.
Cesspool, yeah. But anyways, and if you dig all the tunes that you're hearing at the beginning of our shows and the ends of our shows, that's my music and Mikey's music. So you can check out the links below, and it'll take you all the stuff that we do. The link to the next show is also in the description box, but I think I already said that. That's about it. Thanks to all our members for keeping us supported in the ways that you do. And thanks to all who drop super chats every once in a while for us. It does really help us. So until then, guys, like I always say at the end of the interview part of the show, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens, Hitch slap, says, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.